My name is Erin Monroe. I'm 23, just graduated summa cum laude with a degree in psychology. And this is the part of the story where I'm supposed to tell you how proud I am, how it all paid off. But the truth is, I didn't work this hard to make myself proud. I worked this hard to make him small, or maybe invisible, maybe both. I just didn't know that until the night of the dinner, when the steak was overcooked and his smile was razor sharp, and I finally realized what the mic in his hand actually meant. Power, stage, control, and for once, I was done giving it to him. Let me tell you how everything happened. If you are new here and you enjoy stories like this one, kindly subscribe to this channel, and feel free to let us know where you are listening to us from. Now let's get into the details of the story. He stood beneath those haloed down lights like the star he believed himself to be, holding court in a high-end restaurant he never let my mother pick. 47 guests, not counting staff. All his co-workers, golf buddies, high school friends with hairlines receding like his morality. Some of them I hadn't seen since I was in braces. Others had only ever known me through holiday cards or filtered Instagram photos, smiling next to a man who called me princess when he wanted something and ungrateful when I didn't give it. He lifted his glass with that signature smirk. Let's give it up for Erin, our little genius with the big brain and 0 student loans, thanks to yours truly. Laughter. Polite. Complicit. I watched it ripple through the room like an echo chamber of people who didn't know what it cost to keep smiling, while he carved the air with his ego. I wasn't surprised when he turned toward my mother, and of course my beautiful wife Denise, who made it all possible by keeping the fridge full and staying out of Erin's way. A pause. Kidding, sweetheart. A wink. Sort of. More laughter. Braver this time. Like they'd been given permission. I looked at her. My mother. Sitting in the navy blue dress she'd ironed twice, because he'd once called her lazy in front of my aunt for wrinkled sleeves. Her hair was pinned up neatly, the way he preferred. Her hands folded. Her smile frozen. A woman built to take a joke. I felt the bile rise slow and cold behind my ribs. He handed the mic back to the waiter, already turning toward his seat, one hand lifting his wine. To my brilliant daughter, he said, that final toast of ownership ringing out like a bell. And I stood. My chair scraped against the polished floor, louder than I meant, louder than anything else in the room. People turned, heads tilted, but I didn't look at any of them. I looked at the mic. I'd like to say something, I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it didn't have to be. He heard it. He smiled tightly, confused, performative. Erin, sweetheart, it's fine. No need to. I was already reaching for it. I took the mic from the waiter gently, as if I had all the time in the world. Because I did. Because after 23 years of letting him set the narrative, I was finally ready to tell mine. Thank you, Dad. I began, turning to the crowd. For the dinner. For the speech. And for reminding me once again, exactly who you are. A flicker of confusion passed through the faces around me. A few laughs unsure. One woman coughed into her napkin. He sat straighter. I wasn't going to speak tonight. Honestly, I didn't think I'd be able to stomach it. But then I realized that if I didn't say something, I'd regret it for the rest of my life. I looked at my mother again. She wasn't moving. I spent my whole childhood being told I was lucky, I continued. Lucky to have a roof over my head. Lucky to have a father who worked so hard. Lucky to be given every opportunity. But here's what I learned about luck. It's a lie people tell you so you'll shut up about pain. A beat. A shift. Silverware settled back onto plates. I didn't flinch. Here's what else I learned. Humiliation isn't love. Criticism isn't wisdom. And when someone mocks your mother in public enough times, eventually, you start to wonder if silence is its own kind of betrayal. I watched him stiffen. I used to wonder why my mom never fought back, I said. Why she'd laugh when she was the punchline. Why she'd thank him for gifts he gave her after the nights he made her cry. Now people were visibly uncomfortable. Good. And then I realized she was protecting me. Because when a man like my father is in a good mood, you tiptoe. When he's not, you disappear. And when he smiles at strangers, you hold your breath. Just in case he remembers you're still there. I let the words hang. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I turned to my mother. She hadn't blinked, but her hands were trembling now. She was still sitting, still folded, still waiting for permission to exist. "Mom," I said softly, "you don't have to do this anymore." She blinked. You could hear a pin drop. Maybe a fork. Maybe a heart breaking. "I know you think this is just a phase, or that he's tired, or that men are like this," I said. "But they're not. He's like this. And I'm done pretending he isn't." I reached out my hand. "Come with me." She didn't move. For a second, I thought I'd gone too far. That she'd sink deeper into that chair. Keep smiling like it didn't matter. Like she hadn't been quietly dying for 2 decades. But then she stood. Slowly. Shakily. But she stood. She didn't say a word. She didn't even look at him. She just took my hand like it was the only real thing in the room. And together we walked. We passed the wine glasses, the stunned colleagues, the friends who wouldn't know what to say tomorrow. We passed my father, whose mouth was half open and empty for once in his life. We passed the hostess, the lobby, the valet stand. We didn't look back. Because sometimes walking out is the only speech that matters. And I didn't need a diploma to know that freedom doesn't sound like applause. It sounds like silence you chose for yourself. We didn't go home that night. Not to the house I grew up in. Not to the house with matching stone lions at the front gate. And a deadbolt he installed on the inside of the bedroom door, for peace of mind. Not to the kitchen where my mother kept the good china we never used, and where the silence after dinner was somehow louder than the meal. Instead, we checked into a hotel, quiet, beige, forgettable. The kind of place where the air smells like recycled dust, and you can hear the ice machine moaning down the hall. I booked it with my own card. My mother didn't argue. She just nodded like someone who had already rehearsed this moment in her head, but never believed it would arrive. We didn't talk much. We ordered room service, and she couldn't eat. I peeled the plastic off a sad tray of penne, and told her it didn't have to be forever. Just for now. Just until we figured out what next looked like. She said, "Okay," without looking at me. That was the first night I realized how unfamiliar her voice sounded when it wasn't filtered through him. The first week after we left, no one called me. Not even my father. That was his move. Radio silence as punishment. He knew the sound of absence better than anyone. Knew how to use it like a scalpel. As a kid, I used to dread those stretches of silence. 3 days, 5 days, sometimes more. He wouldn't yell. Wouldn't scold. Just act like I wasn't there. He once ignored me for a week because I dropped a wine glass. Said I was careless. Said I made people tired. Funny how things stick. My mom stayed quiet too. She moved through the hotel room like she didn't want to disturb the air. She spent hours staring at her phone screen, but never typing anything. One morning I caught her rereading old text messages from him. Ones where he told her she was lucky to have a man who stayed. She didn't cry. But she didn't blink either. I started going through my own archives. Not out of spite, yet. More like instinct. I opened folders I hadn't looked at in years. Photos from family vacations. Audio notes from when I recorded class lectures. And forgot I'd left my phone running during dinner. In one clip, you can hear him telling me to fix my tone when I asked for more time to study instead of helping with his taxes. I hadn't even remembered that moment. But hearing it again brought a weight I couldn't name. Like dragging a suitcase you forgot was full of bricks. The second week I sent out the first message. Not to him. Never to him. But to my cousin Maggie. She stopped coming to family functions years ago, said it was about a job, but I always wondered. I told her what happened at the graduation dinner. Told her we left. Told her I didn't think we were going back. She responded in less than an hour. Good. I wondered how long it would take. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I called her. And when she answered, I didn't say anything for a full 10 seconds. Neither did she. But there was something in the way she breathed, steady, unshaken, that made me feel less alone. We talked for 2 hours. Turns out I wasn't the only one keeping stories in sealed boxes. By the third week, I started writing them down. Not just memories, incidents. That's what I called them. Like reports. Like evidence. I created a spreadsheet. Date. What happened? Who witnessed? What was said? How I felt? How she looked? I didn't know what I was going to do with it yet. But collecting it gave me a sense of clarity I hadn't had in years. He had made us feel foggy on purpose. Doubtful. Uncertain of timelines. Emotional historians with nothing but broken clocks and empty frames. This was me building a map back to myself. My mother caught me one night typing. "What are you doing?" she asked. I told her. Honest. No apologies. She didn't say much. Just nodded and whispered, "Good. Don't let him rearrange it again." That word, again, hit harder than I expected. I found the voicemail on a Tuesday. It was from 2 years ago, buried in a folder I forgot I'd backed up to the cloud. My father's voice, low measured, telling me I was causing trouble by asking too many questions about how he spoke to Mom, telling me she was fine, and that emotional girls grow up to be bitter women. I remember saving it. I don't remember why, but listening to it now, I realized something chilling. He wasn't trying to make me understand. He was trying to make me small, and it had worked. For a while. We moved out of the hotel after a month. I found a small rental using some of my savings from tutoring. A place with weak Wi-Fi and creaky floors but no ghosts. My mom moved in with me. She kept saying she didn't want to be a burden, and I kept telling her she wasn't. But it took time for her to believe me. She started planting things, basil, lavender, tiny herbs in cracked ceramic pots. I bought her a lamp with a sun-mimicking bulb. She said she liked the way it made mornings feel softer. She started reading again too. Slowly. Books about resilience. Books with titles like Reclaiming the Self, and When the Narcissist Leaves the Room. She never said his name, but she didn't have to. Every morning she made tea and left a second mug on the table, even when I was asleep. Every night she'd close her bedroom door, but leave it unlocked. People started reaching out. First cautiously. Aunts, friends, his co-workers' wives. Little trickles of curiosity disguised as concern. "Hey, just wanted to check in. Everything okay with your family?" I didn't respond. Not yet. Because I knew what they really wanted wasn't the truth. They wanted reassurance. That the man they laughed with was still who they thought he was. That I was just going through something. That Denise would go back home soon. And everything would settle like a shaken snow globe. But I wasn't here to settle. Not anymore. I was learning how to vanish. Quietly, strategically, without ever having to run again. And I was learning that sometimes, the most powerful revenge begins with nothing at all. Just silence. Silence he couldn't manipulate. Silence that grew teeth. I used to think silence was a sign of defeat. That quiet meant giving up. That when people stopped yelling, it was because they had nothing left to fight for. But I was wrong. Silence isn't surrender, it's surveillance. It's what happens when someone stops reacting and starts watching. And that's what I did. I watched. From our small rental, with the squeaky pipes and the thrift store couch, I started paying attention in a way I never had the space to before. Not just to my mother but to myself. I noticed things, my reflexive apologies, the way I flinched when someone raised their voice on TV, the strange relief I felt every time my phone didn't buzz with his name. I noticed how many of my memories came back out of order, like shuffled cards dumped on a table, sharp edges poking through but no clear sequence. So I started to sort them. I printed photographs. Not the smiling, staged ones from holidays or forced vacations, but the blurry offhand shots that captured moments no one cared about. A birthday candle with a smudged fingerprint. My mother doing dishes looking out the window. My father in the background not looking at us but through us. I pinned them to the wall. Not like a detective, not like a crime board. More like a timeline of denial unraveling. Each one had a caption. Not what happened, what it felt like. This was the day he told her no one else would want her. This was the day I started hiding my report cards, even when they were perfect. This was the last day I believed he'd change. Maggie came by one weekend. My cousin, the first one I reached out to after the dinner. She brought a bottle of wine and a memory box of her own. I didn't ask what was in it. She didn't offer. But I could tell she'd been holding her breath just like us. We sat on the floor while my mom made tea, and for the first time in years the room felt full. Not of fear. Of witness. "You know he's already rewriting it, right?" Maggie said. "Telling people you're confused or emotional, or just going through a phase." I nodded. "Let him." She looked at me carefully, as if weighing whether I understood the weight of what came next. "Do you want to burn him? Or do you want to take him apart piece by piece?" I didn't answer right away. As I didn't know yet. But I knew this. I didn't want a scene. I wanted a reckoning. My mom started therapy. Quietly. She didn't tell me at first. I saw the confirmation email when she accidentally left her laptop open. I didn't say anything, just smiled. Let her have that space. Because I knew how hard it was to say out loud what you've been swallowing for decades. Instead, I focused on my own kind of therapy documentation. I started writing letters. Not to send, just to name. To the principal who didn't question why I always turned down parent-teacher conferences. To the aunt who laughed when he said mom had two modes, cleaning or crying. To the youth pastor who told me to pray for his strength, instead of asking about the bruises beneath my voice. Each letter ended with the same sentence. You heard it. You saw it. You said nothing. I didn't send them, but I kept them in a folder titled Inventory. 'Cause I wasn't just remembering, I was preparing. I opened a private blog. Odyssey. No names. Just stories. Memories. Observations. Not confessions, reconstructions. I published 3 entries before I even let myself read the comments. And when I did, I sat in silence for nearly an hour. Because they knew. Hundreds of people. Women. Men. Children, now adults. All of them with stories like mine. Stories of well-dressed fathers and dinner parties with knives hidden in their words. Stories of mothers who disappeared into themselves. Stories of people who finally left and the ones who still hadn't. You're not crazy, one comment read. You're just finally safe enough to feel everything. I printed that one out and taped it above my desk. I kept tabs on him too. Quietly. No contact. Just observation. His LinkedIn updates. His Facebook posts. The company newsletter my cousin's friend still forwarded to me out of solidarity. He hadn't said anything publicly. Of course not. That was his gift. He didn't rant. He didn't lash out. He just revised reality until it bent under his smile. He gave an interview in a financial podcast a month after the dinner. Said something about raising a brilliant daughter and staying grounded through family values. Played it twice. Not because I believed it, but because I needed to understand the depth of his delusion. He wasn't shaken. He was rehearsing. But something was shifting. Quietly. Slowly. Like a floorboard softening under weight you can't see yet. Maggie told me his assistant had resigned. No reason given. Just gone. My aunt told me he'd called her out of the blue to clarify some things. She hadn't asked for clarification. He offered it anyway. Over-explaining. That was new. And then one night my mother got a card in the mail. No return address. Inside a picture of us. From years ago. Smiling at a 4th of July cookout. Her in red, me in blue, him behind us, hand gripping her shoulder a little too tight. On the back. Family is forever. Don't ruin it.
No signature.
She brought it to me. Her hands were steady. I held it for a long time. Then I slid it into the drawer under the folder labeled Inventory. He thought he was warning us. He didn't realize he just handed me proof. Because the game had started. And this time I wasn't playing defense. The first thing I did was rent the hall. Not for a party. Not for revenge porn dressed up as catharsis. Just a room. A space that could hold what was coming. High ceilings, low expectations. A little community center on the edge of town with peeling paint. And a broken clock stuck at 4:17. I booked it under a different name. Not because I was hiding, because I wanted to control the reveal. Because control, I was learning, wasn't always about dominance. Sometimes it was about choosing when to speak. And who would be there to hear it. I didn't announce the event publicly. That would have made it about spectacle. I made it personal. I handwrote every invitation. 32 of them. Folded them once, sealed them in blank envelopes, and mailed them one by one. Family. Former friends. His colleagues. The people who used to send me birthday cards with $20 bills tucked inside and phrases like, "Tell your dad we say hi." I didn't explain much. Just a date. Time. A note at the bottom that said, "There's more to the story. I hope you'll listen." Then I waited. Not to see who responded. To see who stayed silent. While the RSVPs trickled in, I worked the margins. Not loudly. Not emotionally. I shared fragments. Conversations. Screenshots. Memories. Not accusations, questions. To a former coworker of his. "Do you remember what he said the night Denise spilled wine on his cufflinks?" To my aunt. "Do you ever wonder why we were never allowed to talk at the dinner table unless he prompted us?" To the school board member who used to live next door. Did you ever hear the way he spoke to her when no one else was around? Some didn't answer. Some said they didn't want to get involved, but a few asked for more. And those were the ones I paid attention to, because it wasn't about convincing everyone. It was about opening the eyes that had been squinting through comfort for too long. My mother kept her distance from the logistics. She said it wasn't hers to carry. And I understood. This wasn't her fight anymore, it was her freedom. She did ask one thing. Will you be kind? I told her no. Not cruel, but honest. And sometimes honesty sounds like violence to people who've lived too long with edited versions of the truth. She didn't ask again. The night before the gathering, I sat on the floor of our living room, surrounded by every piece of documentation I'd collected. The photos, the audio clips, the transcripts, the letters I never sent. I didn't cry. I just built it. A presentation, but not the corporate kind. A walkthrough, a narrative, from first silence to final break. From the way he mocked my mother's laugh in front of guests, to the time he told me emotions were a female defect, to the way he'd smile at strangers while draining the room of oxygen behind closed doors. I built it chronologically, with care, with surgical precision. This wasn't going to be a roast. It was going to be an autopsy. The day came like any other. The sky was gray. The air smelled like wet pavement and decision. I wore all black, not for drama, but clarity. A clean canvas. No distractions. Maggie met me at the hall 2 hours early. Helped set up the chairs. 32, just like the invitations. We made coffee. Put out water. No food. No distractions. Just a room. A story. And the truth waiting in silence. By 7 o'clock, 18 chairs were filled. 3 more came in late. One of them was my aunt. The one who used to tell me I was too sensitive when I asked why he never said sorry. She didn't look at me, but she didn't leave either. At 7:07 he walked in. Alone. Of course he came. He couldn't not. The idea that people might be talking about him in a room he wasn't controlling? It would have eaten him alive. He smiled when he saw me. A tight-lipped warning smile. The kind he used to give me after I made him look bad in public. I didn't return it. I just gestured to the chair waiting for him dead center in the 3rd row. He hesitated, then sat. That was the last time he had a choice in the room. I started the way I had to, with the facts, the dates, the timelines, the childhood incidents. His exact words lifted from voicemails, emails, public posts. His jokes at her expense. His digs at my confidence. The patterns of erasure. The invisible cost. Then I paused, took a sip of water, let the silence spread. I wanted them to feel it. The space between what they thought they knew and what they'd chosen not to. Then I played the first audio. His voice. Calm. Cruel. You make people tired, Aaron. You're not thoughtful. You're exhausting. You could hear a pin drop. I didn't cry. I didn't even blink. I ended it the way I should have ended my valedictorian speech. People will say I'm airing dirty laundry, I said. But it's only dirty because no one washed it. Because it got buried. Because it was easier to pretend the stains weren't there. I let my eyes sweep the room. Some of you laughed when he mocked my mother. Some of you called me ungrateful when I pushed back. Some of you looked away. I exhaled slowly. I'm not asking you to fix it. I'm asking you to see it. I closed my laptop, walked to the back of the room, and waited. No one clapped. That wasn't the kind of night it was. But people didn't leave either. Some stayed in their chairs. Some approached me quietly. And one, my aunt, came up with eyes glassy and whispered. I didn't know how bad it was. I didn't tell her she'd known enough. I just said, now you do. As for him, he didn't say a word. He stood, straightened his jacket, looked around like someone trying to find the version of himself that still worked here. And then he walked out.
No applause. No handshakes.
Just the sound of shoes on tile and the door closing behind him. It wasn't an explosion. It was an extraction. And sometimes that's the most powerful thing of all. Because when someone builds their whole life on controlling the narrative, the one thing they can't survive is being seen. Truly seen. With no way to explain it away. After the hall emptied and the chairs were folded and the coffee cups tossed, I thought I'd feel something bigger. A seismic shift. A release. But mostly I felt still. Not calm. Not vindicated. Just still, like the part of me that had spent 2 decades flinching had finally gone quiet. It wasn't over. But I wasn't under it anymore. And that was enough. The first sign came 3 days later. Maggie texted me a screenshot from one of his colleagues' Facebook pages. The caption read, "When a man shows you his values, believe him the first time. No names. No tags. Just quiet smoke rising." The next was even quieter. A board reshuffle at his firm. No press release. Just a revised web page that dropped him from managing partner to consulting principal. Buried at the bottom. No bio. No portrait. Just a name. An afterthought. I didn't celebrate. I just added it to the folder, consequences. I never responded to his messages. Not the first one that said, "We need to talk." Not the second one that said, "You don't understand the damage you're causing." Not the third, the angriest. This isn't how family handles things. I didn't reply. I didn't delete them either. They sat in my inbox like relics of a religion I no longer practiced. His silence after that was its own confession. My mother bloomed. Not all at once. Not dramatically. But in quiet, resilient ways. She started painting again. Not landscapes or portraits, just color. Swaths of gold and rust and navy across recycled canvas. She took walks without telling anyone where she was going. She started using her maiden name at the library. She let herself take up space. I came home one afternoon and found her dancing in the kitchen. No music. Just humming. The kind of hum that belongs to someone who no longer checks for footsteps behind her. She caught me watching and said, "I didn't think I'd ever feel my body like this again." I said nothing, because joy like that deserves silence too. Rumors started circling. Subtle ones. Half whispers. A friend of a friend who said he'd been off lately. A former co-worker who said he wasn't invited to the charity gala this year. His name stopped appearing in programs. Invitations dried up. No one publicly shamed him. People like him don't inspire outrage. Just discomfort. A quiet withdrawal of the approval he'd built his empire on. He posted less. Smiled less. Or maybe I just stopped seeing it. Because I stopped looking. One afternoon, I walked into the bookstore downtown. My safe place since high school, and the owner Ruth handed me a small envelope.
No stamp.
No writing. Just my name scrawled in the familiar hand I used to mimic as a child. Inside, a photo of the two of us. I was 10. He was holding me up on his shoulders at the county fair. We were both smiling. But I remember that day. I remember the fight he had with Mom in the parking lot. I remember him yelling about the price of admission, the way she flinched when he grabbed her arm. On the back of the photo in ballpoint pen, "Don't rewrite history. You were loved." I folded it once and slid it into the trash. Because love without safety is just performance. And I wasn't buying tickets anymore. I ran into him once. By accident. Grocery store. Aisle 7. Canned vegetables and boxed broth. He looked smaller. Not physically. But reduced. Like the high-definition version of him had been downgraded to standard. His shoulders hunched slightly. His eyes scanned and avoided at the same time. I didn't speak. Neither did he. He opened his mouth once, reflex habit, maybe hope, but I just kept walking. Not out of malice. But clarity. Some bridges don't burn. Some rot from the inside until they collapse. Maggie told me he was trying to correct the narrative now. Sending emails. Having closed-door lunches. Telling people I was going through something. That I'd always been a little too emotional. A little too much. But fewer people were listening now. Because the thing about control is, once you lose your audience, you lose your power. One of his former interns reached out. She didn't say much, just thanked me. Said she'd heard about the gathering, read between the lines, and left her job the same week. She said, "I didn't know why I always felt nervous around him. I just thought it was me. It's never just you. That's what I've learned. Shame thrives in isolation. That's why he was so good at it. He didn't make people bleed. He made them doubt. And for people like that, silence isn't just a tactic. It's a shrine. So I took it from him. And watched the whole altar crumble. I used to think revenge looked like screaming, shouting, dramatic exits and explosive truths. But now I know. Revenge is watching someone try to tell their old story. And realizing no one's reading it anymore. It's letting someone feel the weight of what you're not carrying for them. It's silence. Chosen. Intentional. Absolute. Not absence. Power. Closure never looks like what you think it will. It doesn't show up with a bow. It doesn't come with a soundtrack. It doesn't make him cry, or apologize, or fall to his knees the way you used to imagine in the dark before sleep. Closure is smaller, quieter. It arrives when you stop expecting anything from the people who were never capable of giving you what you deserved. It came for me on a Thursday. I was walking home from the bookstore when I passed the church. Not the one we used to attend. He always said religion was for people who couldn't control their own lives. But a small one tucked between a diner and a closed-down barber shop. The sign out front read, "Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means refusing to carry it anymore." I stopped, read it again, and for the first time in a long time I didn't think of him. I thought of her. My mother. She was in the kitchen when I got home. Still in her slippers, still humming, painting again. This time on the wall. Actual brushstrokes, wide and warm. Gold sweeping over primer like sunlight being let in. She looked over her shoulder and smiled. She'd never smiled like that when he was around. And suddenly I knew we'd already won. Not because he suffered. Not because we destroyed him. But because we were finally unreachable. The real end came weeks later. In the form of a phone call I didn't answer. Voicemail. His voice. Measured. Strained. Still trying to control the temperature of the room. Through a recorded message. I've been thinking, maybe we both said things we regret. Maybe we can meet halfway. People are starting to ask questions. It's not a good look. For any of us. That last line clung to me. For any of us. Not I'm sorry. Not I was wrong. Just concerned for how it looked. That was all he ever cared about. I didn't save the message. I didn't need to. Because it told me everything I needed to hear. He hadn't changed. He wasn't capable of it. And more importantly, I no longer needed him to be. That's the part of the story no one tells you. That the most satisfying revenge isn't about making them feel your pain. It's about realizing their pain is no longer yours to hold. I walked to the house a few days later. Not inside, just the block. Just once. Just to see. It looked the same. Same trimmed hedges. Same perfect shutters. Same door he used to lock even when we were home. But something had changed. Me. I wasn't afraid of it anymore. I wasn't afraid of him anymore. And when I turned the corner and kept walking, I didn't feel like I was leaving something behind. I felt like I'd stepped out of a cage that had always been open. I'd just never known how to push. My mom changed her number. She bought new plates. Started saying no to things. She volunteers at the animal shelter now. Brings home old dogs. Gives them warm beds and soft food and lets them sleep in the sun. She says they remind her that healing doesn't have to be fast. It just has to be real. I applied to grad school. Psychology again. This time, not to understand him, but to rebuild others like me, like us, who lost years trying to name something no one else would admit existed. The mic from the dinner still sits in my closet, wrapped in the napkin I used that night. Not as a trophy, as a reminder. That the first step out isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a whisper no one else hears. But it still changes everything. A friend asked me recently if I'd ever forgive him. I said, forgiveness is a door I don't need to open. They asked if I still wanted revenge. And I said I got it. They didn't understand. Most people won't. Because most people think revenge means blood. But I know better now. Revenge is freedom with no explanation. Revenge is walking out. And never once looking back. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to reclaim your voice after years of being silenced, share your thoughts in the comments below. Every story like this helps someone else feel less alone. Subscribe for more emotionally raw narratives about quiet revenge, survival, and the slow, powerful act of walking away. See you soon in the next story.